Virginia.
Sounded, Rachel, like you're looking for suspense tonight. That's exactly what we have to deliver people as we come up to the top of our first hour of returns. That would be 7 o'clock Eastern time, the first list. And here we go. Here's what we have for you. At 7 p.m., these are all NBC News projections. Georgia, too early to call. Indiana, as expected, we are projecting Donald Trump as the projected winner there. Virginia, too early to call, though Biden is leading. In Kentucky, too early to call at this hour. South Carolina, too early to call at this hour. Vermont, up in New England, too early to call. Here is the long and arduous road to 270 electoral votes. Again, one state awarded. As expected, it went to the incumbent president. To the Senate races we're watching, and the battlegrounds especially. Georgia Senate, too early to call. That's the special election. In the Ossoff-Perdue race, Georgia Senate number 2, we'll call it, too early to call between Ossoff and Perdue. South Carolina, Lindsey Graham's bid to stay alive, too early to call. Virginia, Warner leading the race, but officially we have it as too early. Kentucky, Mitch McConnell's bid for re-election, too early. Senate at this hour, and we're going to return to this all night long, of course, with the hurdle the Democrats have to regain control of the chamber. Steve Kornacki, what have we learned thus far?
Well, Brian, I'm literally just eyeing this screen because I want to tell you what's about to happen, what we're expecting about to happen in Florida. Now, the polls are not closed in
unusual today. Let's go to Brian.
Forgive me, as I will ask every time we hear that sound, which means we have a call, and here it is. His first inroad into New England, as expected. Joe Biden has been awarded by our projection the state of Vermont. We'll go to the national map. There we are, the road to 270. One each at this hour, coming up on 7:19 Eastern. Back to the east end of our studio and the ongoing and
perhaps a scattering of same day.
Thank you, Steve.
And that sound means we are approaching another set of states. The 7:30 poll closings, North Carolina, Ohio, and West Virginia. And the time has arrived, 7:30 exactly here in the east. And here's what we have from our NBC News projections. The president, West Virginia, too early to call, though, as expected, Donald Trump in the lead there. Here is the bar graph of where we stand, early yet, very early yet, in the road to 270, one each awarded. You see how the electoral votes have been awarded as well. Big one we're watching tonight is Georgia. It's a battleground. We have it as too early to call. You see the breakout there in early vote. The map of the road to 270 looks like this at this hour, right about now. It's going to be a complex one by the time this is over with tonight. 11-3. Senate races we're following. North Carolina, too early to call. The Tillis-Cunningham race. West Virginia, too early, though the incumbent Capito is leading. Here is the Senate makeup at this hour. We can't show this often enough because of the percentages needed, the seats needed if the Democrats want to end this night back in the majority, back in the U.S. Senate. When we last left our friend Steve Kornacki, he was looking at some new vote in from Florida. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Brian. Yeah, we continue. Again, there you could just...
Welcome back. 7:41 Eastern time as we look at the view from our backyard. I am told that in the last couple of minutes, because a commercial break rolled, depending on where you live in the country, not the fault of any human, though humans may be harmed as a result, that you missed two calls that we made at 7:30. Not so much calls as estimates. They still remain the same. That is that Ohio is too early to call, as is the presidential race in the state of North Carolina, which was and remains too early to call. That's our status. Over to Rachel in the
like Florida, where we're suddenly getting, oh, here we go.
Back to Steve.
We missed the, let me cut in there. We missed the audio from Brian there. We've got issues with Brian's mic. NBC News is now projecting a winner in the Kentucky presidential race. President Donald Trump projected to be the winner in Kentucky. That will be 8 electoral votes for the president. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. Steve?
Yeah, so let's take a quick look here at Georgia again as we come up toward the top of the hour in the next set of poll closings. This is very different from Florida a while. So Georgia, I do think tonight will get a lot, but it'll take a while.
Okay, 10 seconds to go to bring us to the top of the hour. A slew of poll closings at 8 o'clock Eastern, in addition to updates on the states that have already closed. The 8 o'clock hour is now upon us, and here we go. In the state of Florida, if you've been watching our coverage, you know the state of conversation there. We are saying the race is too close to call, separated by just under 10,000. In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, big race, big electoral vote fight tonight, too early to call. In the state of New Hampshire, too early to call. In my home state of New Jersey, Joe Biden, the projected winner of 14 electoral votes. In the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Joe Biden, the projected winner tonight. In the state of Maryland, Joe Biden, the predicted winner tonight. In Oklahoma, Donald Trump holds on to Oklahoma. In Delaware, native son Joe Biden is the projected winner. In D.C., where you can vote without representation in Congress, Joe Biden, the projected winner of the District of Columbia. In Illinois, too early to call is our call. In Tennessee, too early to call, though a lead by Donald Trump. In Missouri, too early to call. In Alabama, too early to call. Nutmeg state of Connecticut, too early to call, though we note a lead on the part of Joe Biden. Mississippi, too early to call. Maine, too early to call. Rhode Island, too early to call, though again we note a lead at this hour on the part of Joe Biden. Ohio, of the battlegrounds, remains too early. Georgia remains too early for us to call. North Carolina remains too early to call. Here is the long and winding road to 270. The colored-in states are the states we have projected, the states we have awarded. Let's check in on some Senate races. First for us this hour. In Alabama, Jones-Tuberville race, too early to call. In Maine, a widely watched race, complicated by the state system and some third-party candidates. It is for us too early to call. Here's the number the Democrats need to gain control of the Senate. Steve Kornacki, we were talking to you.
Well, we got Ohio, and then if you go back to 2012, I think you got something. You can see the trend.
We have a projection, and that is a Trump victory as expected in the state of Tennessee with its 11 electoral votes. That is our NBC News projection when all the votes are counted. Steve, back to you, back to the state of Texas.
Yeah, so, I mean, again, what we're seeing here in Texas, and this is going to start to light up, this is a lot like Florida.
And for an important call in a Senate race. Brian?
We indeed can project that when the U.S. Senate goes back in session, Mitch McConnell will either be majority or minority leader. In any event, the voters in the state of Kentucky have awarded him a 7th term in office. At age 78, Mitch McConnell has pushed back the challenge from Amy McGrath. Right now, a pretty healthy lead. He is our projected winner in the state of Kentucky, already awarded to Donald Trump. Rachel, forgive me, back to your conversation.
No, very good. It's good to know. The that Senate race has been interesting.
At 8:23 Eastern Time, we come back from a break with two calls. The state of West Virginia, as expected, has been awarded to Donald Trump with its 5 electoral votes. And then the land of steady habits, as they call it, the nutmeg state of Connecticut, 7 electoral votes in the Joe Biden column. We'll show you where that leads us as the states color in on the road to 270 with awarded electoral votes thus far. While we were in that last commercial break, the colors started exploding off the map of North Carolina, which leads us back to Steve Kornacki. Steve?
All right, let's take a look here at North Carolina.
What they think.
And I would be watching those 3 states. Back to Brian.
Okay, coming up on 8:30. It isn't much in terms of new news. Another state on the map. You see it along the Mississippi River. But here we are. We've just passed the 8:30 mark, and in Arkansas, here is all we have to tell you. Our projection is that as of now, it is too early to call between Biden and Trump in Arkansas. Back to the East End and our conversation ongoing.
Let's bring into the conversation now our friend Chris Hayes, who has been watching these things alongside us. Chris, I feel like in some ways we're watching the manifestation of the.
Welcome back. We are inside of 15 minutes to some major poll closings, but we want to check in on North Carolina. We still have it too early to call. We could not be watching it more closely. Also, the state of Georgia. We still have it as too early to call, as Steve Kornacki can back us up at the big board. Steve?
Yep, Brian, we're taking a look here at North Carolina again. Let's take a look at then, because we expect the same deal favor Trump.
Hey, Steve, forgive me. We are awarding the state of Arkansas, as expected, to Donald Trump. 6 electoral votes. That's where the vote is coming down as of this hour, and this is what this state does now to the map. You see red filling in the center of the country. Arkansas now completes that 3-state swing. You see the blue coming up in the Northeast. We're back at it. Steve?
And that was North Carolina, Brian, and I'm just looked.
We're inside 15 seconds coming up on the 9 p.m. hour here in the East. There is the list of states with poll closings right now, 3 seconds away from the top of the hour. And here we go. NBC News is projecting, let's start with a big one, a big Northeast state with 29 electoral votes. NBC News projecting, as expected, Joe Biden will win in New York. We move on to Texas. We've been talking about Texas. We have it too early to call. Michigan, hugely critical state tonight, too early to call. Wisconsin, ditto, too early to call. Minnesota, too early to call. To the vital southwest state of Arizona, too early to call. Colorado, too early, though Biden, we note, is in the lead. Louisiana, too early, though Trump, we note, is in the lead. In Kansas, too early to call. Let's go through the Midwest. Nebraska, too early to call. Southwest to New Mexico, too early to call. On up to North Dakota, too early to call. Slightly south to South Dakota, too early, though we note Trump leading in South Dakota as expected. And Wyoming, too early to call. Donald Trump is in the lead in Wyoming. Let's check out the bar graph from the outback view of our building. The road to 270 electoral votes awarded thus far, 80 to 48 at this hour. One more round of the battlegrounds. Florida, too close to call. Pennsylvania, too early to call in the 9 o'clock hour. Ohio, too early to call. Georgia, too early to call. North Carolina, too early to call. And in New Hampshire, again, too early to call with its 4 electoral votes. Let's look at the color map of the states awarded thus far. Are you picking up a trend here at all? Let's also review some of the major Senate races people have been watching and following for months now. John Cornyn is heading back to the U.S. Senate from the state of Texas. In Arizona, the McSally-Kelly race, too early to call. In Colorado, talk about a closely watched race. Cory Gardner, John Hickenlooper, too early to call. And in Michigan, the Senate race, too early to call. That's going to do our review with the seats Democrats need in the Senate. Steve Kornacki, what have you been looking at in the intervening moments? Steve's in Ohio. Hey.
That have lots of African Americans and lots of those wine moms, you can do well.
Forgive the interruption. Another state call, and that is, as expected, Donald Trump, the winner in South Dakota. And while it hasn't come up a lot tonight, there is that stretch of coronavirus that is raging through the Dakotas right now, just part of the backdrop of the vote in 2020 during an uncontrolled pandemic. But that's our projection that when it's all said and done, looks to be about a 70-30 split in South Dakota. Here is another red state on the national map. Sorry, back to the conversation.
Looking at the map, it's actually helpful to have that at this point. Nothing has changed from 2016 in terms of what we have seen here. Trump has won states that Trump previously won, and Biden has won states that Clinton previously won. And any effort to encroach on one another's territory has thus far been rebuffed or at least delayed. And so while it's been fascinating to watch all this stuff come in, I mean, the way that you calibrate your expectations in terms of what's possible for the next election is by looking at the last election, particularly when it's an incumbent running for a second term. But this is, I mean, where we stand right now is nobody's gained ground anywhere. Steve, in terms of what you're looking at right now, we've been talking about Ohio. We've been talking over here a lot about Pennsylvania.
Steve, I got one you may be interested in. Here is a flip for the Democrats. Colorado. Joe Biden. Not a flip, forgive me. This is presidential Colorado. 9 electoral votes. Take back what I said about a flip. Steve, back to you at the board as we look at the first blue state west of the Mississippi for the Democrats on the road to 270. And again, electoral votes awarded by our projections thus far, 89-51. Steve.
Yes, let's take a look here. We're starting to fill in, big picture.
Here we go again. A matching Dakota has been projected for Donald Trump. Again, as expected, North Dakota to go along with South Dakota. Sharp-eyed viewers saw that we had quietly added that bit of red in the northern plains. That's our projection with its 3 electoral votes. That's how the map fills in. Rachel, back over to you.
Sorry, I stepped on you there for a second, Brian. I was going to say that since we have the NBC News projection of a Democratic win in the presidential race in Colorado, that raises the question about a potential Democratic flip there, as you alluded to, Brian, with that Senate seat. So we're going to take a quick break now, but when we come back, we're going to talk about that Colorado Senate seat. We're going to talk about that hard-fought North Carolina Senate seat, where Tom Tillis is trying to fend off a challenge from Democrat Cal Cunningham. We're going to take a look at the balance of the Senate overall as we continue to watch some of these swing state votes fill in. Stay with us.
My friend Rachel alluded to this before the break. This is the Alabama call. Donald Trump has that's unchanged Republican status. But let's go to Senate Colorado. Sorry, here is the map of electoral votes and states awarded thus far. A lot of this is loaded into our computer, so try as we might, we can't avoid it. This was the race we were alluding to. I knew we were on the cusp of a call. That, indeed, is a flip for the Democrats in the Senate. John Hickenlooper over Cory Gardner. For the Republicans, John Cornyn is returning to the Senate from Texas. In Alabama, this widely watched Senate race too early to call. In Arizona, the Mark Kelly-Martha McSally race too early to call. Kansas Senate, additionally, too early to call. Let's go up to the state of Maine. Talk about widely watched, too early to call. Let's go out to Michigan. Too early to call between James and Peters. Arkansas, Tom Cotton's going back to the U.S. Senate. In fact, we have a list of incumbents that are going right back to the U.S. Senate, starting with Chris Coons, Democratic side, Delaware. Ed Mackey up in Massachusetts. Turns out his biggest challenge was a Democrat named Kennedy. New Hampshire, Shaheen's going back to the Senate. New Jersey, Cory Booker's going back to the Senate. Oklahoma, Senator Inhofe going back to the Senate. Mike Rounds is going back from South Dakota. And Tennessee Senate seat will remain in Republican hands with Bill Hagerty, the projected winner tonight. At this hour, U.S. Senate makeup, this is a lot. 40 Dems, 37 Republicans. Net gain of 1 for the Democrats. That's the Hickenlooper victory in Colorado. Cory Gardner was about as heavily targeted as any Republican incumbent going into this cycle. Rachel and colleagues, over to you.
Thank you, Brian. While we're talking about the Senate, I actually want to go to our friends Lawrence O'Donnell and former U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill.
This was expected. Donald Trump hangs on to the state of South Carolina. 9 electoral votes. Back to you and your conversation in the studio, Rachel.
Well, speaking of the Senate, the drama in South Carolina was not expected to be that presidential race. It was Senate races in addition to their presidential status. Lots coming up.
I'm glad you mentioned those closely watched races, and we may not have a whole lot of developing news here at the top of this next hour, exactly to Robert Gibbs' point. It's early at 10 p.m. in the East, but those are the states closing at this hour, and so in we go. In Iowa, too early to call. In Nevada, too early to call. In Utah, too early to call. In Montana, too early to call. Let's go back through some battlegrounds. In Florida, too close to call. We have it as a slight Trump lead. In Texas, too early to call. Pennsylvania, too early to call. Let's get comfortable here. In Ohio, while we're at it, too early to call. Michigan, too early to call. Georgia, too early to call. North Carolina, too early to call. Arizona, too early to call. Wisconsin, you figuring out a trend here? Too early to call. Minnesota, too early to call. New Hampshire, too early, but a Biden lead as our decision guest desk sees it. Here's the map to 270. This is how the colors lay out across the country. You see the outlier, Colorado. On the Senate side, of course, that was a flip on the Democrats. Let's talk about Senate races. Having just closed, this is a big one. You see how much whopping vote is in there. Obviously, too early to call. The Greenfield-Ernst race. And in Montana, Bullock-Daines, too early to call. The Democrats need 3 seats to gain control. Steve Kornacki, do you have any numbers on turnout tonight?
Well, we're looking at numbers across the board. Significant.
We have a call from the Southwest, and that is that Joe Biden has been awarded New Mexico and its 5 electoral votes. Thanks to Vaughn and his good reporting, we've been talking about the Southwest since this puts another blue square on the map west of the Mississippi. Nicole Wallace, where do you put states like Arizona right about now?
So Arizona is one of the states that the Trump campaign was most.
This is Alabama Senate, and remember how Doug Jones shook the political world when he won as a Democrat. Doug Jones has lost tonight. This is a flip to the Republicans. Tommy Tuberville is the new senator-elect. So Democrats went one up in Colorado. Republicans went one up in Alabama. I was never good at math, but it seems like we're right back to where we started tonight, unless your name is Tuberville or Hickenlooper. We're back to 4 needed to gain, Rachel, for the Democrats.
Let's talk about what's going on in Arizona. Brian, you've just changed the characterization in terms of NBC News' projection.
Let me jump in here.
Sorry.
2 more projections here. NBC News has determined that when all is said and done, Democrats will retain control of the House of Representatives, and that's all we're saying. And in the state of Louisiana, we have prepared to make a call when all the votes are counted. As expected, Donald Trump, the projected winner in the state of Louisiana. And as I've been speaking, we have just added Kansas, as expected, in the Trump column. Let's go to the map and see where the colors work out. Rachel, back over to you.
Steve, we're looking at Senate races and presidential races sort of tracking one another in closely fought states. We were just talking about that situation in Arizona where both Biden and Mark.
For you, we have another call, and this is another New England state, and that is New Hampshire, and it's for electoral votes awarded to Joe Biden. We believe when all the votes are counted, differentiated by about 22,000 votes right now. Let's take a look at the map and see where this leaves us as we look nationally. Again, 2 different trends of blue, southwest, northeast, red from the Mississippi Valley to the Atlantic seaboard, all the way up through the middle plains. Rachel?
I will just note that while we are not looking at a lot of flips here in terms of the various states before we rejoin this discussion.
We do. This is not a flip or a surprise, but we have awarded the state of Utah and its 6 electoral votes to the Trump column. We'll convert over to the national colorized map and see that this extends past Colorado now. The block of red that starts in the middle of the country. Rachel, back to you.
It's interesting. In Utah in 2016, of course, we had that unusual dynamic with Evan McMullen taking 20+% of the vote in Utah, which made it such an unusual state. This. NBC has now projected that in the great state of Missouri, President Donald Trump will once again be the winner in Missouri. Again, that is not a pickup for the Republicans. Missouri has been deep red and in the Republican column for some time now, but that Missouri call is now official in terms of NBC News' projection. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, again, we'll be looking at North Carolina right now, too close to call. Arizona, too early to call, but Biden characterized as being in the lead. Pennsylvania, too early to call, with not much in the way of clear expectations in terms of when we're going to know. Lots still to come tonight. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
We are back. You'll note Missouri snuck in there before the break. Illinois has spoken. Neither of these are pickups. They're holds. This is Joe Biden, the projected winner of Illinois, and it's 20 electoral votes. And Senator Dick Durbin is going to remain in the U.S. Senate as well from the state of Illinois. So 2 holds for the Democrats. And to Steve Kornacki, can you bring us up to speed on North Carolina and Arizona, please?
Yeah, here you go. Oh, I think we got some.
Excuse the interruption. Nebraska, part of the split electoral vote, Nebraska, as projected, is being projected to Donald Trump. And we've explained this before. The split congressional district This is the western part, the part that has not been striped on our map. Rachel, please, back to your
Sure. It's a very timely call, actually.
Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt myself right now because I believe Brian has some calls.
We have some calls. None of them flips Mississippi. The projected winner is Donald Trump. That's a hold. Wyoming, the projected winner is Donald Trump. Lindsey Graham is headed back to the U.S. Senate after we take a look at the road to 270. Lindsey Graham is headed back to the U.S. Senate from South Carolina. Jamie Harrison, despite a flood of outside money, especially at the end of this thing, could not do it, could not convert it in the state of South Carolina. The Georgia second race will be indeed a runoff between Warnock and Loeffler. That we have just been able to put in the runoff category. It's a lot to balance, but Rachel, this is what we do.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a lot. It does mean that we are going to have a potentially determinative states left to call.
And boy, does some of the numbers start to add up as we get late in the night, however frustrating this night is for many, many of our viewers. Coming up here on 11 o'clock Eastern Time, and here we go. The state of California awards 55 electoral votes, as is our projection. Not a surprise to Joe Biden. Oregon, 7 electoral votes to Joe Biden. Washington, 12 electoral votes to Joe Biden. Idaho, too early to call. We have determined Trump leads. Here's the graphic to 270. It's 192, 114 at this hour. 270 is where you start the conversation. Here's backfilling some of the races we're watching. This is Florida, too close to call, and we have determined this to be too close to call, though Trump leads. North Carolina, too close to call. Texas, too early to call, Trump leads. Pennsylvania, too early to call. Ohio, too early to call, Trump leads. Michigan, too early to call, period. Georgia, too early to call. Arizona, too early to call, Biden leads. Wisconsin, too early to call. Minnesota, too early to call. Iowa, too early to call. Nevada, too early to call. What are the odds? Let's look at the map. We've been watching the color-coded states get awarded all night. To think that 6 o'clock Eastern Time, 5 hours ago when we started this, it was a blank gray slate. Low, they have filled in. Low, there's a lot of math to go. Steve Kornacki, what interests you that's been popping up on your map in the time it took me to read it?
Back to Steve Kornacki. Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah, we got a big number here. NBC News is projecting Ohio will go in the Trump column when all the votes are counted. 53-45 race right now. That'll change, that'll fluctuate, but that is our projection. 18 electoral votes, a hugely valuable state in the Donald Trump column.
That had previously been characterized as too early to call with Trump in the lead. But again, Ohio now projecting Trump as the winner of Ohio. In terms of what remains outstanding in closely watched swing states, in Florida right now, I should also remind you that that is being characterized as a Donald Trump lead, even though that state has not been called. Florida has not been called by NBC News, but NBC is describing it as a Trump lead. In terms of other states that we're watching, obviously we are focusing, like you can't believe, on Pennsylvania and Arizona and Michigan and Minnesota and Wisconsin. In Texas, NBC is also characterizing that state as a Donald Trump lead at this point, but has not yet called it. But one of the states that NBC has not yet characterized a result for, just calling it still just too early to call, is the great state of Georgia. And polls closed in Georgia at 7 p.m. It's been just about exactly 5 hours since then now. Steve, what's going on in Georgia?
Yeah, we said earlier we thought maybe this Atlanta metro area would lag.
Steve, thank you. We have just passed midnight here on the East Coast. We're in the heart of the order out west. It's a few minutes after 9 p.m. Here's the way we see it. Hawaii, where thoughts turn on a Tuesday night in a boarded-up Manhattan. Hawaii, 4 electoral votes, too early to call. Florida, 29 electoral votes. We have it as too close to call. Trump leads. North Carolina, too close to call. Texas, too early to call. Trump leads. Pennsylvania, too early to call, period. Michigan, same thing, too early to call. Georgia, too early to call. Arizona, too early to call. Biden leads. Wisconsin, too early to call. Minnesota, too early to call. Iowa, too early to call. Nevada, as we have just cataloged, too early to call. Here's the map. Oh, we have one more. Idaho to Donald Trump, your projected winner. That is no change from the 2016 map. Let's go to tonight's map, which you'll recall hours ago started in all gray without a single state filled in. That is about mirroring how these states have fallen tonight. We have so many in the margins yet to be decided. All indications are it will be days before we know. I am very eager to get to our next guest. He's been kind enough to be on our broadcast several of the past nights to talk about tonight, and that's James Carville. James, I need not remind you, you predicted this would be. Hang on, we have a call in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Couldn't even introduce James. The projected winner in the Commonwealth of Virginia is Joe Biden. So, 13 electoral votes in his column, and let's put up where that leaves us on the road to 270 just to remind everybody. And then we'll talk to our friend James. 206 to 136 race right now, and there it may remain rather paralyzed. James, you predicted a night over, done and dusted long before this. What?
To keep the faith and promise that all votes have been counted.
Well, look at this. Sorry to interrupt. NBC News is projecting Donald Trump will be the ultimate winner in Florida, and it's 29 electoral votes. Running right now 51-2 to 47-8, separated by just shy of 400,000 votes in what has just become such a hugely valuable, influential, and for the Democrats, vexing state. As Claire McCaskill and others have pointed out tonight to soothe the anxieties of her fellow Democrats, this was never a projected Biden state. It was on the wish list. It was hoped for. You don't send Barack Obama into a state you don't want. But the candidate himself did not make it a personal priority, preferring instead to concentrate on that blue wall we've been discussing, the very same blue wall that may take days to determine this election result. But Florida, where our projection is concerned, is done and dusted for this cycle. Nicole, I interrupted. Please continue.
No, we were talking about what Joe Biden might say tonight, and I'm thinking of this result in Florida as something that might make its way into Joe Biden's comments.
Lawrence, we have 2 bits of news, second part of which refers to your beat tonight. First of all, we are projecting the state of Iowa will go to Donald Trump when all the votes are in and counted. And more than that, Joni Ernst, it appears, is heading back to the U.S. Senate. She was under real and concentrated threat for her seat, had a bad debate appearance days before the calendar day of Election Day, and Joni Ernst, U.S. military veteran, is going back into the U.S. Senate. So, Lawrence, what do you make that indicates
I could make the noise, but it'll be weird.
There you go. There it is. Now it's official. Rachel, if you wait long enough, you can be awake for poll closing in Alaska.
Woohoo!
It has happened. 3 electoral votes without consequence. Alaska is, in our determination, too early to call. North Carolina, with significantly more electoral votes, is too close to call at this hour. Texas, too early. We have determined Donald Trump leads that race. Pennsylvania, too early. Georgia, too early. Michigan, too early. Arizona, too early. Biden leads. Wisconsin, too early. Minnesota, too early. Biden leads. And Nevada, too early, which leads us with an electoral map thus far that looks like this. 205-171 is where we are. We all know where the states are, where the numbers are that'll plug in those totals. Steve Kornacki has been living in the numbers all evening long. Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Brian, and we're
Indeed, we have another state call, one of the states you just ran through, and that is Texas. It turns out that Democrats, maybe some of them, spotted a blue mirage in some of the early numbers, and hope overcame facts in this case. Texas remains a red state under Donald Trump, and 52-46 and change is where we have the percentages right now. But here is how it affects the road to 270, because that is a chunk of electoral votes. That's a big hunk of red that now makes a south to north path up through the Dakotas for President Trump. No change here again, but still a big piece of political real estate. Robert Gibbs is back with us, wondering how much closer he is to the liquor cabinet. And Robert, have you changed? And we have another call just since in the time you've been talking. Another big piece of real estate on the map. No flip, no change. As expected, Donald Trump has won the state of Montana with its 3 electoral votes, just under 52-44 for Joe Biden in Maine. Too early to call, but Biden is leading. Remember, there are all kinds of vagaries about the way Mainers vote in these elections. The congressional district divide, the ranked voting. You see Montana, we just flashed from stripes to solid red. Again, you can see the geographic path, Robert Gibbs, that the president is carving. But again, no changes here. Back to the point you were making about Arizona. For the folks watching at 1:11 a.m. Eastern Time, it can fairly be. We have another call. It's a small one. It's a mighty one. And that's Rhode Island with its 4 electoral votes. Joe Biden has been projected the winner of Rhode Island. And just as regionalisms have changed and come and gone and developed over the past few election cycles, the Northeast, New England, has become, as you can see reflected on the map, dependable, safe blue ground as for right now. Maine, of course, as we mentioned, remains a question mark. New York, no question about it. Pennsylvania is the next big patch of gray. And Robert Gibbs was just discussing. Robert, is it not a little bit optimistic to say tomorrow morning for some of these counts?
These votes are legal, and there's no doubt that they'll be counted.
Yeah.
Forgive us, the state of Minnesota has been projected to go in the Biden column. It's late at night. but it happened. It got a little wobblier earlier in the evening than a lot of Democrats would have preferred, but as Claire McCaskill pointed out in her prediction that it would go blue, it went blue. That's the margin that we're working on right now, 53.5 to 46 and change. And here is where your road to 270 is, 220, 213, but it's early yet. Sorry, Nicole.
Well, the Minnesota result, I should just note, it's, I think, a sigh of relief for Democrats. They did not think that Minnesota was their biggest vulnerability in those upper Midwest states. But the fact that it went this late before it was called is certainly something.
It's not. I mean, look, that's a nice and comfortable lead. And I think I'm going to go back to something Charlie Sykes said earlier in the night, that the kinds of voters, and Ohio didn't go the Democrats' way, but they're, and again, this came out of Donald Trump's mouth. We know from Donald Trump's mouth that he's bleeding suburban voters, suburban women. So those are the kinds of voters that were repelled by him in Minnesota. They're the counties that he
projecting Minnesota as a win for Joe Biden tonight. We're also looking at the Minnesota Senate race. This is something that I raised earlier on the air. This is incumbent Democratic Senator Tina Smith, who faced a strong challenge from a Republican named Jason Lewis. But NBC can now project that Tina Smith has held onto her seat in Minnesota. You see the difference there, just under 200,000 votes, with 84% of the vote in. But Tina Smith will be returning to the United States Senate from the great state of Minnesota. We still do have a number of Senate races outstanding, as well as, you know, more states than you'd expect at this point. Maine, Hawaii, Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. We'd love to hear from you. Brian.
All right, welcome back. We have a projection, actually a call to make at 4:38 a.m. The state of Hawaii and its 4 electoral votes going to Joe Biden. He is the projected winner in that state. We just saw Steve talk about why that is important. Once again, Hawaii now being called for Joe Biden, winning there quite substantially, 65% to Joe Biden. That brings his total up to 224 electoral votes to President Trump's 213. Here's where things stand now in the Senate with everything that has been going on.
And more ballots have been counted. NBC News now projects that Maine goes to Biden. 3 of Maine's electoral votes. That is a split. There are 4 electoral votes. There's 1 congressional district that goes to Donald Trump. MSNBC's Ali Velshi is at the big board with a look at where things stand now. Ali, give us the very latest. Maine is the latest.
Good morning, Andrea. If Donald Trump had one of these, he might be a little.
So NBC News can now say that Joe Biden is the apparent winner in Wisconsin. The apparent winner in Wisconsin. That would award him, if it does officially go to him, those 10 electoral votes. 99% of the vote in. Joe Biden, 49.4%. Donald Trump, 48.8%, a difference of 20,510 votes. There's still a little bit left to come in. The Donald Trump team has already said that they are going to demand a recount in Wisconsin, and Wisconsin will allow them to do that because they will be within 1%, the 1% margin in Wisconsin. That can't start, though, for at least another week. But again, for everybody, NBC News now calling Joe Biden the apparent winner in Wisconsin and potentially the person who's going to take away those 10 electoral votes. This is a major win for the Biden team, Ali, Vitali, and one that they, as you have been saying, have been banking on since early this morning. We're supposed to hear.
Let's stay on Georgia for a moment, where Democrats held on to the seat long filled by the late Congressman John Lewis. Democratic State Senator Nikema Williams defeated her Republican opponent, Angela Stanton King. Joining me now is Congresswoman-elect Nikema Williams. She's also.
You can answer that question and take this. Casey, give that to me one more time from the control room. NBC News is projecting Joe Biden the winner of the key battleground state of Michigan. All of its 16 electoral votes go to Joe Biden. As we said, he is the one with the clearest path to 270. Let's see where that puts him. Look at here, another razor-thin margin for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. As this vote was coming in, the outstanding vote was very clearly, according to our own Steve Kornacki, in parts of that state that were favorable to Joe Biden. Another blow to Donald Trump's delusion, I guess, at this point last night that he was the winner. And it may move us toward what Donald Trump and his campaign is talking about, which is a legal avenue. Once again, Joe Biden, NBC News is now projecting Joe Biden to be the winner of the state of Michigan. Tim.
Well, Nicole, I'll happily take that bit of news because
we also have an update right now in terms of the United States Senate. Is that correct? Yes. NBC News can now project that in the United States Senate race in the great state of Michigan, Democratic incumbent Gary Peters has held on and will be returning to the Senate. This is an important part in terms of the Democrats and Republicans' calculation in terms of the balance of power in the Senate. It's also been a real drama for Peters himself. That was a tight race. It has taken sort of second place in the national media's attention to the presidential fight in Michigan, but that Senate race was very, very hard fought. Gary Peters will be returning to the U.S. Senate. Again, that's just new. NBC News just projecting that at this hour. We're talking now about not only the outstanding races.
Let's bring in now Democratic Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan, who defeated her Republican challenger to win re-election to Michigan's 8th congressional district. Congresswoman, congratulations on your victory a couple of nights ago. It was close throughout. I know it was a fight for you all summer.
We'll make the adjustments, and we will continue to do what we can on behalf of the American people.
You just got off the first post-election caucus call led by Speaker Pelosi. Give us a sense of her mood and the mood of the other members.
They're all in a good mood. We always remorseful about people who lose elections, especially people you've worked so hard to get elected. You know, I looked at those seats down in Florida, the two adjoining seats that we lost. We knew it was going to be tough to hold on to those seats. But there were two great people. And I think that we'll do what we need to do to recover from that.
Let me ask you about the leadership roles for a moment. Speaker Pelosi plans to run for another term as Speaker. She has said that she wants to be a bridge to the next generation within the Democratic caucus. Let me just ask you really quickly, will you seek another term as Majority Whip?
Absolutely, I'm going to seek another term. And I have demonstrated my being a bridge to the future. Everybody's talking about what a great race that Jimmy Harrison ran here in South Carolina. He lost that race. But Jimmy Harrison set records. He's a young man that came into my life when he was an 11th grader. And we worked with him and with scores of other young people throughout South Carolina. And all of that is paying off. So, you know, I get so interested when people talk about who can or cannot be a bridge to the future. I don't think you have to be 25 years old to be that. That's the age of my grandson, and I'm trying to help him.
Let me ask you about the presidential race for a moment and what the actual race means for the state.
Efforts in that state. What people should understand about how the two sides did contesting this race. It's still so close. It sounds like you believe that Vice President Biden's going to pull it out in the end. We will wait and see as the numbers come in. But how do you feel the two candidates did just in trying to...
They've got their nose to the grindstone. They know there's going to continue to be legal challenges.
I hate to interrupt you.
Yeah.
We've got to call a race here. We're going to go back out west here, and we can call this race the projected winner in Arizona, that special Senate race. Mark Kelly, the projected winner in Arizona. It was a closer race than some expected. Martha McSally had been appointed to that seat, but Mark Kelly picking up a seat for Democrats in the upper chamber there. Mark Kelly, of course, the former astronaut, also the husband of former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, who was nearly assassinated at a campaign event several years ago. Mark Kelly going to the Senate. This is how the upper chamber looks at this hour. 48-48. And oh, by the way, there's a very good chance that those two races in Georgia, there's a chance that both of those could be headed to a runoff in early January. Let's go back out west for a moment. Vaughn Hilliard still in Phoenix. He's in Maricopa County. Vaughn, Mark Kelly going to the Senate. What are you hearing on the ground? Is this what was expected there?
Arizona, the state that appears could help defy essentially what the Republican Party under Donald Trump.
Okay, we have an announcement to make. Joe Biden is president-elect of the United States. Biden is being called with the Pennsylvania votes that have just come in. Biden has been elected, Mika, and tell us about it.
Well, the president-elect of the United States, Joe Biden, has run for president 3 times, and the 3rd time has turned out to be the charm. Not only the charm, but possibly the most consequential election of our lifetimes. He is 77 years old. He was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania, but calls Wilmington, Delaware, his home. At the age of 29, Joe Biden became one of the youngest people ever elected to the U.S. Senate, and that is where he stayed for decades. Even, quite frankly, through tremendous...
Another projection, NBC News is now projecting Joe Biden as the winner of Nevada. 6 electoral votes in Nevada. The electoral vote victory by Joe Biden continues to increase at this hour. NBC News projecting Joe Biden, the winner of Nevada's 6 electoral votes. That brings Joe Biden's total in the Electoral College now to 279. Donald Trump still holding at 214. Ron Allen, we're going back to you now in Washington Square Park.
So thanks, Lauren.
And what would you suggest was the reason for it being perhaps closer than you'd like?
Well, so the vote tally ended up being just under 2 points, and we have tremendous turnout in our district. So that just under 2-point amount.
We've got breaking news. As we have been speaking, NBC News has projected President Trump as the winner of the state of Alaska, a state that was still counting ballots. Republican Senator Dan Sullivan also held on to his Senate seat there. Coming up next, coronavirus cases and hospitalizations hitting new records.
Gang, you'll forgive me. We have some news to break in with coming up on 11:15 Eastern Time, this many days after Americans actually went to the polls. NBC News is projecting that when every last vote is counted in the state of Arizona, Joe Biden will be awarded 11 electoral votes. Joe Biden, your projected winner in the state of Arizona, part of America's long post-election period. You see the outliers still remain North Carolina and Georgia. Vaughn Hilliard standing by in Scottsdale in his home state of Arizona to talk about this long day's journey.
NBC News is now ready to make a couple calls. Let's start with the first. In the state of Georgia, where there's currently a hand recount being done, Joe Biden is the apparent winner. Again, Joe Biden, the apparent winner in Georgia. We use the word apparent when results could change, such as in a recount, although it's not expected that Donald Trump is going to make up that deficit in Georgia. Also, in the state of North Carolina, another state that we had been waiting on, we can now say that Donald Trump is the winner of North Carolina, the projected winner of North Carolina. This gives Donald Trump 15 electoral votes. But Joe Biden is still well in the lead in the Electoral College and is now president-elect and has been so since Pennsylvania was called. Biden with 306 electoral votes, Donald Trump with 232. If everything remains as it is right now, that will be the outcome of the election, 306 to 232. Joe Biden taking over the Sun Belt, Arizona, and getting Georgia. Quite a remarkable thing for a Democrat.